Okay, let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way. I have to go to a wedding and summer just started, so I had to trim all this down. Don't act surprised. I will put the beanie back on. So, this is a discussion that I kind of thought about actually discussing about, I don't know, 2 days ago. And it's something that's been on my mind for a while, especially since February, I think, and given a certain discussion that I had some time ago regarding things that have been going on. And I didn't think about actually discussing it until, again, 2 days ago. So that is a discussion on religion. This might be a bit controversial, or at least on the surface would be controversial, but do hear me out. I have not been a religious person for the longest time. I think ever since, I don't even know, ever since 2020, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe around 16, which is around the time that I moved from Orlando to Dallas. And even then, I wasn't exactly the type to go to Sunday school or study the Bible every once because it just wasn't in me. That and there were certain ideals that were a little iffy. Like, especially with this one story that happened where my dad would give to the church because, of course, back in the day, my parents were into that part of the life, and they would go to church regularly or as regularly as they could. And that one church just left a bad taste in our mouths. So, my dad gives like $20 or something because it's as much as we could allow for at the time. And then the man there was like, "Bro, that's it? That all you're gonna give?" You, you know, Jesus got off on somebody in a respectful way for being a tax collector. Why the hell are you discussing a lack of finance for something like this, for something that should be voluntary? It it, it was something very bad. It made a very awful look for that church. I have more stories, but I'll leave it at there for now. Um, and there were certain things that were just hypocritical for me at the time. Uh, Mainly the thing of like, well, not that this is hypocritical, but the whole God has a plan thing, and you know, saying that whenever something bad happens or whenever uh, something happens to someone else, it just left a bad impression, and I don't think that's the intention of that at all. So that's the big reason that I haven't been religious, or at least haven't not for the longest time. Um, that and when I was young, I found it a little boring, understandably. And then as I got older and older, I would understand the concepts more. But certain parts would make me go against the big man upstairs because, you know, why would he allow this kind of stuff to happen, or why would he uh, allow for somebody to be sinful? That was kind of the big thing um, that I would go against, or at least in my mind, I would go against. But over the past few months, specifically around February or March, I had a certain epiphany, and it was at that point that I couldn't determine myself to be Christian or Catholic because I have a certain interpretation of things. And here's the problem, right? The Bible is down to interpretation because of the way that it's translated. Like, there are so many different translations. Some things can be seen as wrong, or some verses can be seen as translated wrong or right, depending on who you are and how you're taught. And of course, religion will boil down to how you were taught to begin with. Uh, so, while one might entertain the stories that go in with the Bible, it's also specifically down to the way that the person that translated it would turn the words and transcribe them into the paper. So, to that end, I don't read the Bible. I have a bit of interest in it, I won't lie, but church just isn't for me, especially with what's happened in the past. Again, that last church that I went to left a bad taste, especially with the music that they played. Ish. But what does that boil down to today? Like, what do I interpret? And what I interpret out of this might get a little personal. the way that I interpret it is God gives us all the tools at the table. He gives us everybody else. Um, and it just boils down to how you use the tools that you have in front of you. If you're going to respect them, if you're going to use them, if you're going to exploit them, and if you'll see people as the same. Will you also respect them? Will you exploit them? Will you harm them? Do other things to them? Or will you be in favor of those people? They may be in favor of you. And there's a lot of moving gears that boil down into that and how things will go in general, but that's just my 2 cents on religion. Um, we're given a sandbox. What do we do with it? That's up to us. And depending on the interpretation of the man upstairs, because he is at the end of the day the judge that's going to see us when we die, this determines our driving force. Whether you believe in it or whether you don't, that's totally up to you. And, there's other religions as well. One that by proxy has been taking interest is Hinduism because of a certain friend of mine. I take certain interest in it, especially those of you that might have seen the Demon Souls video will note that I looked into Kali a little bit, and I think Kali is a pretty figure. Might have that as a tattoo one day, but still, there's a lot of stuff that I find interesting about religion. The amount of faith that somebody can have into their figures, the documents, I suppose, like Bibles, scriptures, all that kind of stuff. The way that people celebrate, it's all interesting. Just the variety is enough to keep looking into it. Because there's universal ideologies everywhere. The concept of good and evil, the concept of what you give will return, and that sort of stuff. Especially with karma. Of course, we all joke about karma, like, oh, karma's a bitch and it's gonna get to you, but I do, to a certain degree, believe that karma is something that's present in the world. So that's one reason that I can't be definitive on what I believe in, because there's so many things that can work from certain religions in somebody's life that you may not expect. And I guess to that end, I consider myself more agnostic even before I had this epiphany. I accept all religions. Naturally, of course, that's what the liberals would like as well. So, and it's also nice to see people indulge in these sorts of things. There's at least 2 people that I follow on Instagram that will get into brief detail about certain aspects. Again, with my friend who follows Hinduism, I believe. He's been very informative about certain aspects. And I genuinely find it interesting. Maybe I'll get a taste of that one day myself. And then the other one would have certain Bible verses. Of course, we have some Instagram accounts that have Bible verses slapped onto their bio, which admittedly I find a little cringe, but if the verse has some significance to what that person is or what that person believes in, that's absolutely fine. In retrospect, I should say. And there's some other ones that are just plain cool, like Egyptian mythology and their religion with Osiris, Anubis. I think all that stuff is really cool. And the Eye of Ra in particular is a very nice, or at least a very interesting symbol to look into. Or is it the Eye of Horus? I forget the exact name. I'm sure you'll know exactly what I mean. So yeah, not to sway anybody to my religion or my interpretations, not to sway anybody into any other directions, other than just respect other people's religions, because who knows, maybe you'll find something that will interest you or something you'll agree with. And I know this isn't a religion, but the thing that I most connect to is the idea of Taoism. Not everything is pure. Nothing's purely evil, nothing's purely good. And it's something that is so good as a concept and genuinely not like it's so flawless that I actually want to have it as a tattoo on. I guess that's about it. Something short. I don't know when the next video is gonna be, the next scripted one, because uh, I'm just in a pool right now of ideas, and it's very hard to trim them down. But I'll come up with something soon, I hope. Probably within the next week, even though my sister's birthday is coming up, and I have a wedding to go to that same week, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's about it. Everybody should hopefully be indoors because summer's coming. If you're in Canada, then disregard that, and other than that, just take care of yourselves.